As I say, the Māori Party is happy to support this bill at its third reading.
Brendan Burns.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's been interesting to listen to the speeches of a couple of the preceding speakers in this debate and note the comments from Mr. Bennett about how this bill serves the best interests of New Zealand. I say to that member opposite, this bill serves the best interests of a tiny percentage of New Zealanders. Mr. Biscown from the ACT Party said we needed to look to Asia. We needed to look to Asia where they have low tax rates. Well, I say to that member opposite, we sat next to each other at the state luncheon today for our retiring Governor-General. I am happy to pay my taxes to help pay for that lunch. There is no free lunch. If you want to live in a responsible and decent society, paying your taxes are the price you pay for things like that and a multitude of other things beside. And if he wants to swap the life that we have to go and work in a Chinese sweatshop and pay low tax rates and earn $200 a month to produce Adidas T-shirts with All Black slogans on them, good luck to him. Go to Shanghai or wherever. If we want to take that to its ultimate analogy, we need to look no further than what happened in the United States Congress but a couple of weeks ago, where the Republican and rump of the Tea Party of the Republican Party forced a vote which said we will not support any tax increases on the billionaires of the United States, but, Mr. President and those in Congress, we want you to cut Medicare, we want you to cut education spending, we want you to cut pensions. And what does that mean? That means that America has been through a financial downgrade as a result of that decision. That's where you get to when you get into a mantra which says cut the taxes to the wealthy and impose the costs on the rest of society. If you look at the comments only in the paper today of Warren Buffett, America's wealthiest man, saying he wants to pay more taxes, he should pay more taxes. Or look at the commentary last weekend from Bernard Hickey, saying we actually need a thriving middle class in New Zealand, not one where we have seen the wealthiest 1% increase their share of the wealth from 7% to around 14% in the last 20 years. That's the sort of direction we are heading in with this bill. With this bill, which takes which does away with gift duty on the very wealthiest in our community. Part of the explanation for this bill was that gift duty only raised around $1 million a year and cost half that amount to administer. And I say again to the Minister in the House, that's disingenuous, because what this piece of legislation, what this policy was about, was actually to stop more avoidance and structuring, and the very fact that so much money is spent by people on gift arrangements suggests that people are doing very well out of it. That's what it's about, that's why it's there, and that's the reason it should stay in place. I commend my colleague Leanne Dalzell for her reading of the regulatory impact statement, and particularly around Part 57, where they noted that in fact until October last year actually you got a greater benefit from gift tax because the tax rates were a little higher, and of course removing that top tax rate has removed the tax advantage. So ipso facto, do away with gift tax. What a lovely logical consequence that is. Set it up for the fall. I also wanted to point out to the House that the regulatory impact statement, and Leanne Dalzell is right, members of the Labour Party do read the regulatory impact statements on bills like this. It said this in respect of some of the impacts, and they consulted all of the government departments relevant to the gift duty repeal. And one of the commentaries came from MSD, saying that if the change were to happen, there could be some ramifications. There could be some ramifications around some of the issues with residential care subsidy, and saying that if gift duty is repealed, people will be able to transfer all their assets into a trust instantly. At the moment, they have to stage it. They have to do it by $27,000 a year. And they're also noting that they do have a provision where they can look at how people may lump some things. But here we are. MSD would need to review its administration of the financial means assessment if gift duty is repealed. So we are having heralded in front of us that IRD is going to save $400,000, and what a great saving that is. But here's one government department saying its cost structures are likely to rise as a result. They went on to say that staff training would therefore be required around the operational impacts of the changes. There would also need to be complete land title searches for properties where applicants have spent some significant amounts of time living to determine whether it has been gifted by the applicant. And MSD has noted that this will lead to increased operational costs. So there we are. We're saying that we're actually going to be saving some money at IRD, but looking at the potential for extra costs at MSD. And that was it without any real analysis around what this might mean in terms of what the state has to mean in respect of residential care, where they've got a carefully managed regime to try and ensure that people are paying a fair component of the cost of residential care. And obviously these changes could impact upon that. MSD also commented about entitlement to working for families tax credits, an issue very dear to the Minister who introduced this bill and to the government, which is wanting to crack down, we are told, on those who might be rorting working for families tax credits where not appropriate. They're saying there is the potential for applicants to transfer income earning assets out of their name in order to remove income associated with the asset from their taxable income. Again, a consequence from this bill, and it underlines the very premise that Labor has been saying. This gift duty is there not for what it brings, but for what it prevents from happening in respect of further rorting of the tax base. There was commentary further from Housing New Zealand, not seen as a big issue because most of the people in state housing aren't likely to be the beneficiaries of gifting arrangements, but nonetheless there was seen to be some risk around that. And Housing New Zealand said it would be on the alert for those kind of outcomes. Child support, another area where they believe they would have to keep a watchful eye with the fact that the gift duty arrangements were going to be removed by this bill. So there are a number of consequences around this legislation, and Labor has said explicitly that this is not an appropriate measure to be introducing. We need an equitable tax base, most especially at this time. We need arrangements which underscore and underline that everybody pays their fair share. And gift duty has been an arrangement which simply said to people that you are there, it is there to try and ensure you do pay your fair share. It hasn't been a great revenue collector. It was actually pointed to after an earlier national government move to remove estate duty in 1992 as part of a need for an ongoing protective mechanism, one that has been weakened with the last year's move on top tax rates. So in summary, Mr. Speaker, Labor is saying very clearly there are good elements to this bill, sensible, progressive amendments to tax law which have come through the Finance and Expenditure Committee, which Labor has supported. But when it comes to gift duty, we say this is an important protective mechanism of the tax base. It deserves to stay in place. It is there to ensure that equity prevails in the tax system. We need to ensure equity is preserved, not just for the fact that we need to balance up the amount of tax that people pay and ensure it's not just paid by the lower end of town, the top end of town, but that should play its share. It is also there to try and provide a signal to people that we're all part of one community and one society. And when you get signals being sent consistently, and the member opposite just intervening then was one who was just a few minutes ago saying, well, those on the bottom end do get assistance, why not the top end? The point is the equity of the arrangements. You must have a broad agreement that we are an equitable society. All of the international research is saying, in fact, New Zealand is a much less equitable society than it was even 10 or 20 years ago. That puts at peril our very socio and economic base. And when we chip away at it time and time again with tax measures like this, we are putting, I think, at risk our society itself, because if people do not feel that they're getting a fair shake at things, then there will be consequences from it. We are seeing this change come through at a time when we've seen in other countries some of the consequences where inequity has become to a point where people have taken to the streets, I think we actually have to acknowledge that those risks are there for New Zealand, and every time we chip away at our tax base with measures like this, rewarding the top end of town when there's no real case for it,
Sorry to interrupt the
we put
honourable member
ourselves
as
at
time has
risk.
expired. Call Aaron Gilmore.